Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the third year of CEO Chat. My name is Al Cini, and you better be Joe Asamendi. I mean, that's who you were last week anyway.
And this week also.
I like to be frank and earnest. In Chicago, I'm frank. In New York, I'm earnest.
Okay.
I know. It's
Good to talk
an
to you,
old
Al.
joke.
There you go.
But we're starting our third year on CEO Chat.
Yes, we
I
are.
can't believe it, considering you get younger, and I'm looking at the monitor, and I get older that's enough of that. We have a terrific guest. Her name is Mare Rosenbaum.
Welcome, Mayor.
Hi.
Such a pleasure having you on.
right.
And we've
Pleasure being here.
We've had
Thank
lots
you.
of opportunities to talk, so I feel like you're an old friend, and we've got so much to talk about. But I want to start with what makes you different. I know that you're an executive coach. I also know that maybe 3% of people who need executive coaching ever take advantage of it.
That's right.
And probably 95% of the market never does, which is a shame. So what is it you do differently as an executive coach, and what can people expect from that?
Well, I work with people on their motivation, their internal motivators like values. I work with them to get past their fears, which create obstacles to anything else that they might want to do.
Okay, great. So that means tapping into the emotional aspects of their work life, not just the cognitive aspects.
Yeah, and not just their work life. I mean, it's really hard to be in a box, you know. When you work with somebody, you deal with the whole person, and that whole person shows up to work.
Bring your whole self to work is something we
Right.
hear from time to time.
Right.
People should be doing that. So integrating somebody's life to include their experience at work is really a big part of what you do.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing this?
Probably, let's see, going on 13 years now.
Wow, okay,
Yeah.
great. Great, so you've got lots of experience making a difference in people's lives. It's
Yes.
terrific.
It's important to understand how people feel about their work, just except for what they know and not necessarily, right?
Absolutely. I mean, when you get caught up here is where the problem starts.
Right.
It's all stories that you tell yourself. It's trying to get below that and deal with what's in here, because you want to jump out of bed to go to work.
Right.
You know, you don't want to be just going through the motions. It shows.
Yeah,
Right,
it
sure.
makes a difference.
Yeah.
So who typically calls you? Is it the owner of the company who has an employee they want you to work with, or is it the employee themselves? Or
It's both, because I have a private practice and I deal mostly with executives looking for next steps. So it might be, you know, something to help them get to the next level in their career. It could be choosing a completely different career.
Okay, great. And what's an engagement with you like? How does it start?
Well, it starts with assessments. Kind of have to hit the ground running because coaching doesn't go on forever. It's usually a limited engagement where you have specific goals. So what you want to do is understand this person as quickly as possible. And after the assessments, we start with a developmental history session where we go through, you know, their whole life, you know, their family, where they came from, what's important to them, and then we start working on the development plan. So what is it that they really want to accomplish in 6 months?
Okay, great. Now that development plan is something we're going to talk about more in the second segment, because I know you just recently wrote a book.
Yeah.
And that book really kind of is a small capsule study of how you approach working with people in terms of setting things like goals that make sense. But you also have another area that fascinated me when I heard about it, and that is you specialize in helping executives deal with relocations, moving from one place to another.
Yeah.
Talk about that. That's relocation, that's your relocation service, right?
Yeah, so that's with Homeward Bound Relocation, and that's what I began 13 years ago. And really what I was doing was executive coaching. I just didn't know it at the time. But companies would call me when they'd say, you know, we've spent 18 months trying to find this candidate, and now we want to land them, and there's a move in the way. Their partner or spouse really doesn't want to move to Philly.
Right.
Can you help us? And I did. I met with a lot of success, and so I was called frequently by either the company's talent acquisition or HR or a recruiter.
No. Okay, now I want to make a really important point here. Hiring you as a relocation consultant is not about you telling me what to pack in what box,
Absolutely
what tape
not.
to put on the box, what labels to put on. That's not it. What you do is help me deal with the emotional aspects of changing my city, changing my job, and changing my life. And I've got a whole family that's coming along with a ride for that.
Yeah, 96% of the time that a relocation fails, it's the partner or spouse at home was either not included in the decision, they were not acknowledged for what it was that they did, and it's very important to address their concerns holistically. The whole family is moving.
Right.
It's not just the executive.
Right. So that story that you hear sometimes from a spouse, well, I got dragged here and I got pulled there,
I was one of those.
then you
Experience.
you have a lot of empathy for somebody who
I
might be
do.
filling that role. You know what that feels like.
Yeah.
So you would be dealing with my wife, you would be dealing with my children, not just me in that relocation.
That's right. Everybody has to win in this, otherwise it falls apart.
Okay. How does that conversation typically go?
Well, it starts with, where are you in the process? And I hear,
Uh-huh.
or I hear, I'm really excited about the job, or I hear sometimes both of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to find out what it is that's important to them at this point in their lives. Because even if they've moved 100 times before, every move is different. And I think HR makes the mistake of thinking, well, these guys are veterans at this. They've done this many times before. And every move has its own unique challenges. And it's never about the real estate. It's never about the house. It's always about the people that are coming this way and how to get them to feel like they belong.
What's the biggest fear they have?
Safety.
Safety.
Believe it or not.
Really?
And I think a lot of people have this image of Philadelphia that was back in the Rocky days. So, that's the first thing to overcome. And of course, you land you land the plane in Philadelphia, you look around and you're like, oh no, I think this is a mistake.
Right.
Right?
Oh,
So
true.
it's overcoming that and actually aligning what we have here, because we have so much here. It's not a matter of finding what you want, it's a matter of knowing what you want.
Okay. No, that conversation then that you have with the wife and with the husband, where you really try to find out what it is, the goal really is to make sure that nobody feels victimized in this process. You want everybody to feel like they're a part of it.
And everybody's empowered.
Right. And this got you into executive coaching, because I'm thinking to myself, a
Yeah.
relocation in your chair is a change. This is change management, isn't it?
Yes, it's change management, and it's interesting that you say a relocation in your chair, because there's an exercise that I do with HR where in the middle of my presentation I ask them to get up and change seats. And what arises is all of this resistance, and it's like magnify that about 100 times. That's what your people are dealing with.
And it's all unspoken, too. I mean, normally it's never brought up even in the conversation. You're really putting your finger on something that we see commonly as a kind of a failing in most organizations.
Yeah.
That's onboarding. What do we do when somebody joins the organization? Do we really have a program for that?
Right.
So-
Well, a lot of times they do have programs, but they forget about the person.
Yeah. Well, isn't that interesting? So the onboarding is more than just what are my benefits, where's my seat, what's my new phone number?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of that's not unimportant, but the really important stuff is, do I feel like I belong here? And am I going to hit the ground running? Or am I going to spend a month just getting acclimated to this?
And what does this mean for my partner? What does this mean for my children? Right? They're giving up something to be here. So right now there's a gap in the process. There is no way to address the people at home. There's settling in services, there's real estate, but it's not about that. You really need a coach to get you through this.
Okay. Now, how much more of this are you getting to do these days? I know the economy kind of perked up a little bit there for a while, and there was more hiring. Does that mean you get more phone calls generally?
Sometimes it depends on the real estate market, because in the crash of 2008, nobody was moving domestically. I was getting a lot of people from abroad. So even that can affect the economy, of course, affects.
Well, I was
my
going to say,
business.
I hadn't even thought about international relocation, but that is another area in particular where you've got to deal with cultural differences and
That's
not just physical change of circumstance.
Right.
And you do that.
I do that.
Oh, good. That's good.
I have also lived in Brazil for a couple of years. I did 5 corporate moves myself.
Okay.
So I can really empathize with what they're going through.
Good. And in a conversation with you, then it starts, I guess, at no charge, where I just get to know Mare Rosenbaum and how she can help me.
Yeah, we start to walk through the process, but it's mostly the companies that hire me on their behalf, so that I am an outside resource for that family. They can be absolutely honest and candid with me because there's confidentiality. And so I'm on their side. I'm always on their side.
That is such an important point. So we have people watching the program who might be CEOs of companies, and they may want you to help them with an executive level person who they feel could reach the next level if they just had some coaching.
Right?
That's one of the things. Another possibility is you got people relocating from other places that might need the kind of help that you offer. The important point that you made just now is that when you do that, you're advocating the person and not the corporation that hired you.
Right.
Then that confidentiality is a very important. If they express a concern about something, they feel safe, and that concern is going to stay between the two of you and not go back to the people who might be paying your bill.
Right, and knowing what the obstacles are is the most important thing. Otherwise, how can you address them, right? So that confidentiality helps to at least open things up so that they can speak freely. And we can deal with things that they might not want to tell HR about. They might not want the entire company knowing about, especially when you get to the C-level. These highly visible people in the company, they're very private about their personal lives.
They might feel a little vulnerable,
That's right.
considering everything, especially in the middle of a
And
relocation
everybody
like that.
does. Everybody
Yeah,
does.
wow. Okay, so what kind of outcomes? I mean, if you do this right, which I know you do. We've
Thank
had
you.
enough time to talk about this. When you do this right, what kind of outcome do you get?
I say 100% success. And the reason I say that is 96% of my candidates that I work with say yes to the move. And when they say yes, they mean yes. So they're not going to turn around in a year or 18 months and decide that this didn't work for them. The 4% that say no, they say no before the move, so that you have
Before
not
anybody
made
spent a lot of money,
That's
before,
right.
before we've uprooted all family pointlessly.
And created vulnerability for your company. I mean, think about the IP that might walk away with that candidate that
Right,
has
seriously.
spent a year in the top ranks of your company.
So if somebody relocates, they have you helping them with that relocation, homeward bound relocation. They're more likely to stay longer. They're more likely to be productive earlier in their career.
Hit the ground running, yeah,
Okay,
day
I
one.
think that's another really
That's
good
right.
point. Maybe you could talk about that for a bit.
Yeah, well, if they're putting out fires on the home front, how can they possibly focus on the job that they're doing? And usually they start before the family has actually arrived. So they're in two places at once. They're trying to tie things up on the home front back where they were originally living, and they're trying to start a new position. So, you know, you want to help them make that transition as quickly as possible. You don't want them in temporary housing for 90 days. You want them to be able to slide right into their position and take the reins.
And from a personal point of view, the outcome for me, having worked with you, is that when I get to this new place, my partner in life feels like he or she was part of what happened. I don't have that strife and angst and grief that I normally have to worry about. Maybe I've had some help placing my kids in schools. Maybe I've learned a little bit about the town I'm moving to,
Yeah,
so that I'm not spending any time other than working when I'm at work in those
That's
first
right.
couple of weeks. that
you're
I'm there.
focused. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that is really effective. And I know you have kind of an art background.
Yeah.
Well, and we're definitely going to talk about that. But how much of what you do is a creative process rather than a... I don't want people to get the impression that coaching is about helping people through a step-by-step process. Like, as you said, it's really about helping people feel like they fit in, feel
Yeah.
like they're part of something. So there's an awful lot of creativity, I think, involved in that, isn't there?
Well, I think creativity really helps me to brainstorm with them, to come up with different approaches, something fresh and different. It's certainly helped me to develop my methodology, which is unique. It's proprietary, and I've taken them through several different steps that I use in facilitation with companies, but using that with the family so that they can identify this overwhelming amount of information. They can distill it down to something that's really important to them.
See? Methodology. She's smart. She knows what she's... I like that word. It's a good word. And we're going to talk more about that methodology thing
You
when
learn
we come
something
back.
new on this program all the time.
I know.
Watch them with that book.
I know it. See? And we'll talk about the book too when we come back. Back with Mare Rosenbaum after these messages here on RVN TV CEO Chat.
Don't go away.
Choosing Medicare coverage can be a very confusing and complicated process. Help is just a phone call away, 856-226-4800. As a licensed insurance agent, I'll assist you in making an informed and confident decision on a Medicare plan that meets your needs, lifestyle, and budget. Call me today for a free, no obligation Medicare benefits consultation, 856-226-4800.
When did you see the sign?
When I needed to create a better visitor experience.
Improve our workflow.
Attract new customers. That's when Fast Signs recommended Fleet Graphics.
Yeah, now business is rolling in. Get started at fastsigns.com.
What what do I want to be when I grow up? Maybe a musician? A veterinarian? Maybe an equestrian? A mommy? Well, why not be all these things and more? Consider joining me, Dr. V, with friends and colleagues as we explore a wide range of topics together. V is for variety, here on RVN TV.
Welcome back to CEO Chat. My name is Al Cini,
I'm still Joe Osamendi.
and we have a terrific guest today.
Yes, we do.
Absolutely. An expert in corporate relocation and executive coaching. Her name is Mare Rosenbaum, and she's recently written a book called The Art of Dreaming Small. I'm going to hold this up. And you can get it, The Art of Dreaming Small, Mare Rosenbaum, on Amazon. Is that
That's right, yeah.
Now, just before the break, you were talking about how you have a methodology. I love that word. And the book kind of encapsulates your methodology. Is that right?
That's right. So I had 2 clients come to me at the very same time, I mean within days apart, and they are miles apart, but they asked for the same thing. And that was to help them develop their bucket list. And I'm like, why? Why me? And I thought, well, how do I help them do this? And so I started to tap into the methodology that I developed for Homeward Bound. I had to change a few things, and it worked beautifully. I also had to try it on myself to make sure it worked before I gave that to them. So,
Good. So dreaming, and you mentioned there is a difference between a dream and a goal.
yeah.
That's important. So dreaming small is about trying to close that gap, I guess. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think it's important to know what a dream is. You know, like I want to be a famous person. That's a dream. That's something you have no control
Famous
over.
author.
Right, but I can be an author. I can write a book, and it starts small, and I can start to build momentum toward that bigger goal and feel success immediately. And I think that's important. That's what gets you forward.
Yeah, that what you say. As soon as people start to feel like there's some momentum in their lives, they can build on that momentum to move themselves from one step to the next. And that really is a part of this. If you concentrate too far ahead on something that's too lofty, your failure to make headway against that is going to mean you don't get anywhere, which is a big disappointment pretty much for everybody. And that is what you do as an executive coach. Is that right?
That's right. I help people to identify what is most important to them. What is it that drives them? What is it that makes them tick? And focus on that, and not the obstacles in the way.
Okay.
How do you get people to think realistically? Because, you know, a lot of people might not look goals, but they have dreams, you know?
Not surprised you asked that question. That's actually that's a typical Joe Asamendi question. I like that. How do we get Joe to think realistically?
So I'm glad you brought that up, because with dreams, to identify what is a dream and what's a goal, is it realistic? How much risk does it take?
Right.
And how much reward is there? And so if you can separate the dream, which is important to have,
Right.
it's important to have that vision for yourself, from the reality of where you are right now, and start looking for things that bring you fulfillment every single day, making every single day count, which is really, by the way, what the 2 clients were after. They weren't really after a bucket list, because both of them were top in their field, had the world at their feet. They could do anything they wanted. What they wanted was more fulfillment out of every single day. And so that's where the art of dreaming small came from.
And from your point of view, in the C-suite, does it matter whether they're a chief marketing officer or a chief HR officer, or?
Not at all.
It doesn't make any difference what role they're in.
No. I mean, we're all human beings, you know, living life, and we are trying to get to something that has more meaning for us, even at that level.
Okay, now that's where the art part comes in.
Yeah.
I know you have an art background. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, because that feeds this process, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's hard to separate it from anything or everything that I do. I'm entrepreneurial, and at the heart of that is making art, being creative.
Right.
I think in business it translates surprisingly well. I mean, you've got risk-taking, you've got communication, you've got unconscious bias, you've got to work with people, you have to collaborate, you have to influence, communicate your vision. And so learning about art and the process of making art helps with all of those things.
Well, So it isn't about turning people into Tony Robbins.
No.
I mean, what you do really, the art of what you do is to find the magic inside of an individual,
Yeah.
the thing that really makes them magical, and remove the fear that prevents them from using that. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, identifying what those fear obstacles are, because sometimes we suppress them so much because we don't want it to show. So it becomes so embedded in us, it's hard to even know what's stopping us. So trying to figure that out with them and walking with them through that process is part of the executive coaching I do.
And this is something you do as an associate in the Kersey Group, so maybe now would be a good time to mention that.
That's right, that would be great, yeah. So, yes, I work with the Kersey Group. We're a consultancy in Philadelphia. And
Kersey
right
isn't spelled out, so,
Oh, C-U-R-C-I.
okay.
And we've got a really, really fun and exciting project that we're working on. Besides all of the executive coaching that we do in facilitation and leadership programs, we are working with a prominent Philadelphia art museum. I can say that. I have to be careful.
You're
here.
narrowing the field down.
Yeah, I know. But there are a lot here in
There are.
Philadelphia.
The city has a lot to offer.
That's right. And we're developing a leadership program and a business program that solves problems for businesses through art.
Great. I mean, that's very, it engages people at a level that way beyond, we make the joke all the time about death by PowerPoint.
That's right.
A lot of people feel like engaging people is a matter of stuffing facts into their heads. But in fact, it's getting them to have a feeling about something and then tapping into the energy that comes from that feeling to make them feel like they belong and
Right.
that they want to make a contribution. And that really is the art of that. So the Kersey Group kind of specializes in artistic expression of business goals or business objectives.
We like to say the art of leadership.
Wow, that's a great watchword. So leadership training is part of what you do with the Kersey Group? Is that
Leadership development.
leadership development?
That's
And that is
right.
partly coaching and partly, I
It
hate
could
to say
be-
training because it's learning, isn't it?
Right. Well, there are some training programs for middle management, let's say, or for teams. But we help to develop teams as well, make sure that they're all working in unison toward an aligned goal.
Okay?
And working with senior leaders and high potential employees is what we do best.
Okay, so you're currently then kind of splitting your time between Homeward Bound, which is your company,
That's right.
and also what you do with the Kersey Group.
That's right.
You know, that's really-
Multi-talent. There you
Yeah.
go.
Variety, it's the spice of life.
Yeah, there you
I think
go.
we were talking
Yes,
about
we
that
were.
before.
Well, let's not talk about it anymore. Okay, so an engagement with Mayor Rosenbaum really is about trying to find that magic inside me. A company might, okay, I actually have a question for you because a lot of people I think are,
Okay.
yeah, a lot of people I think are a little skeptical about working with a coach who is hired by their company. Now, I know that you mentioned there's a confidentiality there.
Yes,
But there's
absolutely.
something deeper than that. I mean, if the company hires you to make a better salesperson out of me, right? Well, making a better human being out of me is really kind of the first step in that process, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
You can add any skill on top of that. It's really developing your own potential.
And really, the outcome that a CEO might want working with you would be to take somebody who might be focused on a particular set of bad behaviors that are not working for them, make them more mindful of that so that they can start making a plan. We talked a little bit about that
Develop
planning
plans,
process. And
yeah.
to me, that's where the rubber meets the road. So talk about that planning process.
Well, after a series of assessments, so we like to hit the ground running. We like to know people really, really well before we even start our coaching. We do a development plan. And the stakeholders, there are several stakeholders in the company that are part of that align with that because they have to support this employee as well. And even if they are the CEO, they need stakeholders to help to give them feedback. And so we develop this plan so that in 6 months we know exactly what we're aiming for. And we have checkpoints along the way. So it's the challenge, it's what actions as a coach, what can I do for you to help you get to your goal?
Okay, real quick, we're coming up on the end of our program. Believe it or not, it's, as always, it was a fast half hour, but
Absolutely.
in particular, I think in this case. How long is an engagement with you? How long do you typically work with somebody?
A minimum of 6 months.
Really? So,
Yep.
so it's the kind, that is how long it takes to really make a difference in somebody's life.
Yes, and sometimes it goes a year. Sometimes it can go longer than that if they want, but it's 6 months. Yes.
But there's always a plan to move forward
That's
from
right.
there. It's
Yeah.
not like it's a permanent thing, which
No,
is,
and it's up to the client.
it's up to the client then.
That's
great.
right.
Okay. You have written a terrific book called The Art of Dreaming Small, Mare Rosenbaum. You definitely want to get this on Amazon. Before we end the program, talk right into the camera, tell everybody how they can reach you to retain you as a coach.
Okay, you can go to my website, marerosenbaum.com. You can email me at mare@homewardboundphilly.com. Or you can call these guys.
Yeah, or you can call us. Call Joe. Joe, my number's not listed for a whole bunch of reasons. I can't.
My number out there, but
Mayor Rosenbaum, what a pleasure. Absolutely.
thank you so
Great pleasure
much.
meeting
Thank you so much. Happy New
Yeah,
Year.
thank
You for
you.
joining
You
us on
too.
CEO Chat. And thanks to all of you for joining us today until a half an hour from now. My name is, what was my name again?
You're Alcini.
And you must be Joe Assamendi. Who else could you be?
Well,
He always dresses better than I do.
the one and
Really
only.
So irritating. The one and only.
If it wasn't me, I'd want to be me.
Absolutely. Thanks very much.
Thanks
Take
a
care
lot.
now.
We'll see
See
you
you in half
later.
an hour.